prepare yourself.
The opinions of the host and guests on this show are exclusively just that, opinions. That means that they shouldn't be the cause of your state of being offended. Why does everybody get so butthurt?
Okay, let's go. Ready, go!
Welcome to And God Created Woman, where the arguments are necessary for the best make-up sex of your life. Unless you're single, and then we suggest you just go fuck yourself.
All right, real. Oh, I almost said the wrong thing. And God Created Woman podcast. It's been a long day. It's a good day already. Joining me again, one of our favorites. Sarah from EverydayStarlet.com. I have nothing planned for today.
Great.
I just said, hey,
wonderful.
Let's have.
It's gonna be a short podcast.
I don't. That's fine. This just shows the dynamics of our ability to talk. So whatever. Let's start off with the last time you were on, man. You saw Remains of the Day. For those who haven't seen,
That's what you wanted to talk about. You were like, "What do you want to talk about?" I assume that's what you wanted to talk about.
we can start there. Sarah's been on several podcasts before. You could go check her stuff out. EverydayStarlet.com. Everyday Starlet over on, TikTok, Instagram. Just go look at her all over the place. But you do big movie analysis, more like eclectic films. Period, like some period pieces, but early stuff like
well, that's because you always request that stuff. Like you're like the one who's always like requesting like all these like period movies, and then I'm like, okay, and then you bug me every 2 seconds. You're like, have you watched it yet? Have you watched it yet? Have you watched it yet?
I've never requested you to do Cat on a Hot Tin Roof because I've never seen it. Even that was Liz Taylor, right?
You've never seen Cat on a Hot Tin Roof?
No, that's Liz Taylor.
Yeah,
Gosh,
Liz Taylor and Paul Newman, like the sexiest couple. I mean, they're like the worst relationship ever on that movie, but like, it's one of the sexiest couples.
Was she married 5 times?
Yeah, but twice was to the same person.
Okay. All right. So I requested Sarah do a breakdown. One of the biggest things that you do is the male-female dynamic energy balance between stuff that's in cinema. And we did a podcast talking about did cinema kind of ruin the expectations of relationships and all this, but Remains of the Day. I think it was 1992 or 3. I don't remember what year it was. It was Anthony Hopkins, Emma Thompson, or is it Emma Thomas? I can't remember. I
think it's Emma Thompson. Yeah,
she was in it.
Early Hugh Grant.
Oh God, it was just a great movie.
You know who else was in that? Was she's a really bit part, but it was the maid, like the young maid that they hired that ended up marrying the up and coming butler.
I gotta look this up. Okay.
You know who played her was the Queen in 300.
Oh, shut up! I gotta look at that. Are you kidding me?
I looked at her at first. She looked so familiar, and I was like, "Is that Keira Knightley?" And then I was like, "No, she'd be too young for that movie." And then I looked it up, and I was like, "Oh my God, no way!" Because 300, I did a breakdown of 300, and that was like one of my favorite breakdowns that I did.
Oh, all right. We will get to that one because that's got one of the best scenes. There we go. There's our direction today. But for those who are returning, listening to this, having you on again, give us your thoughts of Remains of the Day, and I'll give you mine.
My thoughts on that?
Yeah, what's your dynamic? I'm not going to spoil. No, God, I don't think too many people are going to see it. But it's like, if you talk about it.
It's from the early 90s, though. I mean, so it's like if people haven't seen it already, it's kind of like you can't really apologize for spoiler alert.
He should have opened his fucking mouth. Let me just say that.
There you go.
There you go. That's the end of the movie.
Okay. It was so funny because when you first told me about it, you were like, oh my God, the ending. I was so pissed. So I was waiting to be pissed the whole time. And then the movie kind of ended. You know what it was, though? It was a very early 90s movie. I feel like the 90s was like the era of like, life sucks, deal with it kind of thing.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like every
right.
other movie was kind of like, had to have a happy ending at the end of it. Whereas like the 90s was that, it was the era of like, reality bites. It's like, yeah, life sucks and we all have to,
Yeah, there was a lot of Benny and June, What's Eating Gilbert Grape. There was a lot of heavier movies from that era that I remember.
And stuff that didn't have like this movie didn't really have a very happy ending. You know what I mean? It wasn't like
ending.
It didn't like wrap up in a nice little bow like you expect Hollywood movies to wrap up and stuff.
So
I do think What's up?
We wouldn't really call that unrequited love then, would we? Because it was returned, but they have this like 40-year love affair, but nothing happens. And that when it seems like these two old, Titanic's about to sink couple is ready to get together, the movie disappoints you and you're like, are you kidding me? I remember seeing that movie and I was so emotionally invested and I was pissed off. I'm like, would you open your mouth? And no, it didn't happen.
Well, so the interesting thing, in my perspective, I look at it in terms of masculine and feminine energy. So to look at this movie that way, I mean, the butler, Mr. Stevens, played by Anthony Hopkins, he was so in his masculine energy. Like because he was so focused on a determined purpose. Like he had a distinct purpose in life. It was to be a butler. It was to be the best butler in the world. He got that from his father. That was his destiny. That was his role in life, was to be the ultimate butler. And many people believe, I stand by this, and I get a lot of hate from some of the little boys on TikTok when I say this kind of thing. But when a man steps into his masculine energy and he really finds his passion and purpose, he doesn't want a lot of women. And I think that's kind of one of those things you say to a lot of the younger guys who are like up and coming, like, no, when I get a lot of money and I get a lot of success, like I'm going to just bang every chick on the planet. And it's like the men who are truly focused on their purpose are not spending their time running around with a lot of different women, because
a lot of effort is distracting.
It is. It's very distracting. Like feminine energy is very distracting. It's probably the most distracting thing to the masculine. So when men actually have a focused purpose, they tend to most men are going to want to settle down with one woman who is in support of whatever his purpose is. And that's going to look different, obviously, depending on the man and depending on what his purpose is. He's going to want to find one woman who is really in support of that. But many cultures believe, and this is actually a big part of like David Data's teachings and things like that, is that if a man fully steps into his masculine energy, like just fully, completely, he's just in it and he's so devoted to his purpose, he'd probably become like a monk or some version of a monk.
Okay, all right, go ahead. I have a question. Go ahead.
And it's because he would be so, I mean, not necessarily a monk in the terms of it had to be a religious thing, but he would be in that some kind of seclusion and just block out any distractions. So like any feminine energy would be a complete distraction. And most men obviously are not going to want to go to that extreme, because that's a pretty extreme circumstance.
Yeah, because most of what our purpose is, it seems like it's for the purpose of attracting a woman. So that's where it's like, can you be satisfied as a man, like, yeah, with that monk energy of being like, I'm self-sustained. I don't know what you'd have to be like 80 years old and like, I'm just done with women because they're all headaches.
Well, I mean, I think you're looking at it from more of the cynical perspective, which I mean is valid. But again, and that's the reason why most men are not going to choose that extreme, because for many men, they have the desire to have a connection, to possibly raise a family, or to have some kind of feminine energy in their lives. So most men are not going to go to that extreme. But if a man did choose to completely dedicate his life to his purpose, and I also think too, when I say purpose, it's not just the concept of, because I do think there are a lot of men who are they're working for success to attract women.
Yes. Yeah.
Whereas
that's societal, I think. I think
that's completely societal. Okay. Because in reality, when I talk about a purpose and we talk about stepping into the masculine energy and finding a purpose, it's usually a purpose that is greater than himself, or greater than just the idea of attracting a woman. It tends to, it's greater than money. It's greater than finance. It's greater than all those sort of superficial things. And I mean, ultimately it'd be great if that made him a lot of money and success and made him very appealing. But in reality, it's really more about like what is my reason for being here? And for most of us, our reason for being here is probably something deeper than just making a lot of money to attract a lot of women.
Again, societal. So that's Western culture, right. Money, cars, women. I mean, we have music and movies based off of it. That maybe that's why it's an Eastern philosophy where you have monks that are like, nah, fuck women. I don't need to literally do that, because their priorities are different. And we know that comes from what nature, nurture. So yeah, when you're 3-5 years old and you're being raised and all you see is, things. Yeah, your status for women is going to be based off of that. Yeah, I understand that.
That could go into a whole concept of how we manipulate people in our society.
Yeah.
I actually did just see this. I think it was a TikTok breakdown or something of, this woman was talking about, there's some philosopher or whatever that said that the quickest way to weaken men in a society is to make, I think it was like women promiscuous and nudity common.
Oh, you're doing it because we can't control.
We're totally doing it.
We can't control.
That's what the whole women's lib movement is all about.
100%. And it blows me away because in that same thing, right? Your values change. Scarcity no longer is an issue. Now it's who's got more shock value that's going to get my attraction. But isn't it funny on that same the flip side of that coin? I don't remember what the phrase is. I talked about it the other day, but it's men. The greatest achievements for man happens when they go through the devastation of a breakup. Because what do? They want to achieve more for anything to, just to get her back, to prove to her his worth. But men pour themselves into their work and elevate themselves in their production when they go through that massive heartache. So we're slaves to the opposite sex. It's ridiculous.
Well, I don't necessarily know. maybe that's you.
Yes, in my younger years, of course I was. Because I went through all that. You did. You achieved. I said it all when I was much younger. I one of the first loves of my life. I was 22, and I walked in on a phone conversation. I think I've told you this. I've walked in a phone conversation that she was having with her sister, and she goes, "Well, Becky, that guy's only in construction. Can you see himself, you marrying him?" So, here I am, 22. I'm a bartender, and I sit down in her bed. She gets off the phone, and I go, I'm just a bartender, right? And she goes, "Well, Dominic, I really can't I can't end up with somebody who doesn't make 6 figures a year." Well, sure as shit, if that didn't, and there was a sexual aspect to that too. I hadn't been with many women at all at that point. I didn't have sex till I was 22. And, we were talking about the sex aspect. She goes, "How are you really worldly? You've only slept with like 5 people." So after the breakup, I instantly became obsessed with monetary success and nailing everything that moved. And that was like, my goal was to define my purpose in life because this person had left me. And at the same time, I had to go be a man whore. I went through that shit.
Well, but a lot of that's societal, right? And it
goes
pain.
To it was pain.
The idea.
I wanted her to see my value, and I didn't have value because I wasn't rich and I didn't sleep with a lot of women.
Okay, well, I'm doing the math in my head right now, and I'm like, you said that you didn't sleep with anyone until you're 22, and now you're telling me that you're 22 dating this girl, and you're like, oh, you've only been with 5 women, and I'm like, okay, so I'm like, oh my God, 5 people in 1 year seems like. For me, that seems like, wait a second. Okay. That seems like a lot of people. I'm just saying, like, that's where my mind goes. But anyway, I'm just doing the math in my head.
I respect that.
But I do think that again, there's youth and it gets attached to the idea that, and I don't want to separate money from this completely because at the end of the day, in our society, money is highly tied to security.
Yeah.
So we can't necessarily separate those. But once you get beyond the level of security and money just becomes about the ego thing, I think if we put that, our society puts that on people. It's like, okay, it's the man that makes the most money that automatically has value. And it's the woman who is whatever, young and attractive, and she has the most value. And we put that in this, that's what's the most valuable. And that's not to say that those things don't have any value. But if you make it so that that's the only situation, because like how many relationships really, if you think about it, that are only based on money and looks really are sustainable?
Hollywood, what?
Well, that's why they're not sustainable.
Right.
That's why Jennifer Lopez and Ben Affleck like gave up and were like, hey, we're just going to get with each other again. That's like,
I got to call, my air quotes older brother is Scott Barnes, her makeup artist. So.
Oh, okay. I know who he is.
I got to see that it is. Yeah. And give him a call.
I'd be like, seriously, what was Jen thinking? Is she just run out of men at this point?
He probably won't tell me. In that, so we have purpose-driven Anthony Hopkins. He's Butler. Was it purpose-driven or was it stubborn stoicism? Early 19. Well, that was before World War II. So we're talking 1920s English stoicism, can't show emotion. And maybe that was, I mean, is that virtuous now, or we should go back to that type of men don't tell women how they feel because it's better. What is it? Better to have loved than lost and not love at all. Well, you know what? Maybe in that case it wasn't.
Well, I think part of it was, and again, whether or not being a butler was all he knew, so that was the only thing that he was going to be, or whether or not that was just truly his purpose. Like, he didn't have to dedicate his life completely to that. I mean, because if you notice that the other butler who ends up running away with the maid and falls in love with her, and he talks about other people in the staff, it's like, it's one of the reasons why he tells the females that he hires in the staff, it's like they can't have gentleman callers. I think that's the big rule in the house, like no gentleman callers. It's like, I think he views relationships and actual like emotional connection as just being a distraction. They even say that. I mean, it's interesting how Emma Thompson's character, she was Mrs. Kenton, or Miss Kenton. She tried to put flowers in his office, and flowers are very, very symbolic of feminine energy. Flowers and the feminine are very much the same. You know, flowers are, I mean, if you think about it, like the feminine is really, its value is in its beauty. And I'm not talking about physical beauty, but in just the beauty. Flowers, they open or close depending on their environment, whether or not they feel safe and things like that. Flowers are very much feminine energy. It's nature. Feminine's tied to nature. He doesn't want those in his office. It's like, I think he even says that they're distracting. It's just flowers are distracting. It's like, she doesn't understand that to him, anything that's feminine is just a complete distraction to him. And whether or not it's because that's what he truly wants is to not be distracted, or whether or not he thinks that that's what he should want, I mean, that's something that we don't necessarily know. But he doesn't, and I think they mention it later on where it's like, oh, you never hire any young attractive women on the staff because they're distracting, or it's always, everything is, or even that book. Oh, when she's trying to seduce him and she's kind of like, is that a dirty book? Because she keeps asking him if that's a dirty book and stuff. And it's like, he just says, no, it's a romance novel. I'm just trying to improve my English. It's like, he's reading romance strictly to improve his English.
Right.
Like,
I have to wonder how much was it self-protection, because again, you're looking at a different time. You know, they stay in that house 24/7, got a job. There's probably nothing worse to do than polishing the silver, putting plates out, getting ready to prepare dinner, clean the carpet, or beat the rugs that they did back then. And then you got somebody on your mind you can't do anything about. So I have to wonder if a lot of it was self-protection. Get all the way to the end, 40 years or something had passed, and it's like, right there, she's just, it was like a streetcar or something driving away, and it's raining, picturesque, and he's just like, yeah, let it go. And she's but screw her for not opening her mouth either.
No, but she did, though. I mean, she was basically, in her own way, she was throwing herself at him. I mean, in that very proper British way. I mean, the fact that she's like getting so close to him, like with the book thing where it's like, is that a dirty book and everything? Yeah. Or even, she even tells him when he comes to see her later on, like she even tells him that she pretty much just got married just to piss him off and to get his attention. And like, she only got married. She told him that she was getting married because she wanted him to say, I don't want you to marry him. I want you. Like, that's why she got married. She told him that.
Games.
Like, in that moment, it's not a game though. She was inviting him. She was literally inviting him to make a move.
Think about that. And we could talk about that for a second. That's a power game. That's where, I'm dating somebody. She says, let's get married, or I say, let's get married. She says, yes, but it's only to piss off another guy. I'm the one who loses. So she's playing games with people's lives for the attention.
Well, I mean, I think in that time period, she didn't know. In that time period, she didn't necessarily have options, right?
You need that security. Yeah.
Right. She was either going to be a maid for the rest of her life and not, it's like, how long was she going to wait around for this man who she obviously had fallen for? And it's like, it's interesting how, when she tells him that she's getting married and she's like waiting for a reaction out of Stevens, and she tells him about how she's been talking to her now fiance about him and all these little things that she notices, which is something about the way that he blows pepper off his food, or some kind of thing that she says that she talks about him with this guy. Right. it's like she's literally telling him like, yeah, I'm thinking about you while I'm with this guy, and he's not picking up on that. You know what I mean? Like he's not getting that. But you notice too in that movie, every time Anthony Hopkins, like when with his father or when he's upset about Miss Kenton leaving, every time that he goes back to do his work, they always ask him if he's feeling okay. They tell him he doesn't seem like he's feeling okay. Kind of like he's obviously suppressing those emotions so deep that like they just assume he's ill. Like they don't actually even assume that he has emotions, but they're like, oh, he must be ill, because it's like he's pushing that down so much because he doesn't feel like that aligns with him. It'd be interesting to know if that would, though. I mean, if you think about it, if he was going to be in a relationship, have this job, have this role, and actually be in a relationship, would there be a better woman?
Where are we today with that? Think about that for a second, because now you're talking about the responsibility of staying stoic years ago, 100 years ago, staying stoic, keeping your emotions oppressed, because I can picture it is selfish, right? I mean, there's, I don't know who I was doing. Maybe I was doing the podcast with you. There was an air quotes one that got away from me years ago, like 10, 15 years ago. And a couple of years ago, I thought about reaching out to say, just to let you know, you're the one that got away, but she's married with a kid. And I had to stop myself, and I was very glad I did, because it was the mature thing to do, because you gain nothing from that, and that does nothing but present a potential problem to that person. It's selfish. So in that aspect, you stay stoic, you deal with the cards that were given to you. Now we're in a day, though, an age, our phones, our social media is all about me, 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 me. We don't have the balance of, now you have people who go on their TikTok like crazy. I was dealing with a narcissist, and you have so much sympathy-seeking heartache on TikTok. I talked to a woman I was following a couple last year, and I had to unfollow her. I sent her a DM, and I said, just to let you know, I'm going to give you from a man's point of view. You are constantly putting up TikTok videos of like you with tears on your face, talking about this heartache, this and that, how you got hurt. I said, if and when you're ever ready to date again, you realize the internet is forever. I said, as a man, why would I ever pursue you? You're just showing me that you're a train wreck. You're showing me that I have to compete with this. So where's the in-between from 100 years ago, we were stoic, and today we're all like me, 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 me. There's damage on both ends.
Well, I mean, it's interesting too, because I went through a divorce technically while I was on social media. And I mean, I grew my social media following while I was going through my divorce, but I also was a little bit older. And so I was a little bit more mature. I don't know if I was always mature, but like I was a little bit more mature as to like what I was choosing to share and what I wasn't. But like I've had a few breakups in the past where I'm like, I am so grateful that social media wasn't really a thing back then.
Yep, same.
Because I could have really like just gone off the handles.
I would have been a cuck simp. Oh my God, she left. I would have, dude, I know 100% I would have been like that. There's no question. Yeah. If I had the audience, I would have been, she's gone and she's fucking another guy. Oh, it would have been horrible. And I know I would have done it.
I wouldn't have done that.
I would have.
Okay, you would have. That's fine.
I was so comfortable in my feminine energy. It's ridiculous. But I was very looking for sympathy. Yes.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, but I mean, I do think that that's a common thing, and that's the reason why a lot of people do it. I mean, I know for me, like I look back on, I had this really, really awful breakup, and I don't throw this word around lightly. I know a lot of people do throw this word around lightly. I take it very seriously.
I know what it is.
No, I really do think this guy was a sociopath.
Wow.
Yeah. Like the level of like manipulation and like disconnection from reality and stuff was like really eerie. It was like, and I didn't even see it at the time, because that's part of when you're involved with someone like that, you don't necessarily see what's going on because you kind of get caught up in the delusion and stuff. And it was a complicated situation where, you know, we were together and then he ended it. And then it was like, he kind of just kept coming back into my life and just trying to screw up my life. And, you know, until finally I got to a point where I was just sort of like, I have to just, by that point, social media was a thing and I just had to block him on everything because he was just so psychotic. But I remember like when we first broke up and I was just like, I was a mess and I didn't really understand. I still didn't understand at that point, like what had really happened and all the manipulation and the mind control and everything that happened. But it ended. And I just felt this incredible need to be like, he's not who everybody thinks he is. And I just felt like I had to tell everybody. And it was this, I feel like most people that knew us, like our mutual friends and things, people that knew both of us, they all kind of knew that he screwed me over. So they were like, okay, we get it. Like she's bitter. Like he was obviously like a crap boyfriend, blah, blah, blah. But they didn't really see how two-faced he was and how manipulative. And I just felt this incredible need to, I mean, I was like,
yes,
25, 26 or something. So it was like this kind of like, no, you guys, you don't understand. Like this guy is, and like, they were like, okay, whatever. And actually, I finally gave up at a certain point because like I was just looking crazy in that moment. Like everybody just thought I was the psycho. And it was years and years later, I remember that this random guy who, you know, knew us both and whatever, I ran into him and he was like, hey, I was hanging out with your ex the other day and like, he's legitimately crazy. And I was like, yeah, I know. I've been telling people that for years. Like, it's not news to me. And he was like, no, but like, I literally always thought that you, like, I knew he was an ass to you. Like, I knew that, but like, I always thought, okay, she's just bitter. That's why she's telling everybody this, like, whatever. But like, no, he is really nuts. Like, he is just really, he's one person with one group of people. And then he's like a totally different person with somebody else. And I was like, hello. It was kind of like a little bit of vindication. Like, yeah, see, I told you, but like nobody wanted to hear it. So I feel like I would have been more the type of like, yeah, no, this guy's nuts. Like on social media, be like, this guy's crazy. And like, nobody would, they'd be like, okay, she's obviously the crazy one because like, you know,
I don't know why we need that. We need that getting people on our side stuff. I get it. I've done it. It's like you see when you were talking about that, I'm like, oh my God, I can feel my blood pressure rising because I've been in those situations going, no, that person's not who you think they are.
Right.
But then you try to stay stoic because, you know, it's not your, karma. Karma will get them, but karma never really comes fast enough. And then it's like, dude, what do you really get out of it with whatever type of closure by getting that validated? I just don't know where the balance lies between saying your piece in either situation or holding on to it and letting that emotion just fester. Because I can't, like, you ever have those people who are like, you need to go home, take one of his or her shirts, burn it, and have a funeral for them. And you're like, what does that do? What does that? It doesn't do anything. And we want people to be held accountable for their feelings. I think that's what I got out of the ending of that movie. I was frustrated because I'm like, would you open your mouth and acknowledge this? And that, because you've felt that in relationships. You wronged me over, or you screwed me over. You wronged me. I want your acknowledgement. And even when they acknowledge it, it's not good enough. It just doesn't feel good. So I don't know where we're at with all this demanding of ownership.
I had two interesting experiences where I actually managed to get closure in a relationship, because I know everybody wants like that infinite closure. It's like you need to have that closure with someone. And most people are like, you know what, the closure is just ending it and moving on. I had two different situations that were kind of eerily similar, where I ended up attempting to be friends with an ex. But it worked out. It ended up, I mean,
women can be friends, men can't. Men can't be friends with exes.
Well, no. But like it worked out for me. Like we didn't keep the friendship. Like the friendship didn't go well, but it worked out well for me because I think in both situations, and I would only ever advise this if you follow very strict guidelines to do this, because in both cases, there was a pretty good amount of time after the breakup. Like it wasn't like we're like, oh, we'll stay friends and tried that. It was like it ended, a good amount of time went by, and then we would run into each other or something. And it was like, hey, maybe we should hang out and try to be friends. Now, in both situations, well, in one situation, it wasn't all that serious a relationship to begin with. So it was a little bit easier. And then when we decided like, hey, let's try to be friends, he heard friends with benefits. I heard friends with benefits. Of course.
There you go.
But what it did in that situation was I got to see him, because I think what I do, a big pattern that I have is like, if I meet a guy, I project this whole fantasy on him. I'm like, oh, he's so, and I like put him up on this pedestal, like he's so much greater than he actually is. And so then when he'll break up with me, it's like, oh my God, I lost this amazing guy. And in that particular situation, how it worked was attempting the friendship.
You saw the reality.
I saw the real him.
Yeah.
At that point.
Yeah, that's really the point.
Worked.
That's the point. Because what do we see? Things through rose-colored glasses, and we don't want to see the well, that's what people do, right? Is you spend your first 6 months acting, and it's like, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh my God, that's why most relationships do not work out, because people are not who they are. Yeah, that is closure. That's closure, because we fall in love with the potential.
Though, was actually with the sociopath, and we attempted years later to be friends, and I still hadn't really figured out that he was a sociopath. That wasn't a word that was being used at that time, but it was sort of like we're just going to be friends. And I was literally, and I kept my boundaries with both situations. I was like, this is a friendship. There's no benefits. Like, there's nothing more. I kept that, which not everyone can do. I'm really good with boundaries when it comes to that stuff.
Women can, men cannot.
Right. So, but with that situation, he started to try to manipulate me again. And that time I caught it, because I was more aware of what was going on, and I was more aware of the situation. And so in that situation, it made it easier. I mean, it was still hard to eventually walk away and be like, okay, I'm not doing this anymore. But it did make it easier, because it was like, I was more like, okay, now I see this guy for who he truly is now, as opposed to just the person who I had up on this pedestal, which is funny, actually. I talk about a pedestal. I really think it's symbolic, but it's true, because with the guy who's a sociopath, when I would see him, like after we broke up, and I would see him out, and I remember I would look at him after the breakup and be like, did he get shorter? Like, I feel like he's shorter. And people would look at me and they'd be like, no, it's the same height he always was. I'm like, no, I swear to God, when we dated, he was taller. I mean, he was like average height. I mean, it wasn't like a big deal, but I'd look at him and I'd be like, no, he was way taller when we dated, wasn't he? It was like, I literally had him up on such a pedestal that it was like, when it ended, it was sort of like, oh my God, he didn't look like that when we were dating, did he? It was like, it's like a mental game, but it's like, that's how much I was in it. It was sort of like, okay, whoa. So it really did. I mean, and again, I would not advise the friendship thing unless you have you're really good with boundaries, which not everybody is. And also that you take some time so that you've moved through the emotions of the actual breakup, so that you don't have that in your head.
The dumpy is always the one who's hoping that the friendship will lead to the rekindling. It's like, yeah, take your time. And then women, they call that monkey branching, where they will stay with it. So, and I've experienced it with almost every relationship. A woman will check out of a relationship far longer before she does. And then she finds another guy, then she moves on. Just goes from one to the next. Barely, a lot of women, and this is not you, it's clearly not you, they do not stay, they don't do single. They go from one to the next, one to the next, one to the next. Okay. And it's always the guy who gets dumped. Well, not always, but I'm just generalizing. It's the guy who gets dumped, who when the woman's like, I need some time, and then he goes off to better himself, and then hoping when she comes back that she wants to be friends, but it's a chance again. That's a guy thing. Do you teach closure at all?
Do I teach it?
Yeah.
Not
Do you ever talk about closure or anything? That's
interesting
an interesting
topic. I should
topic.
definitely talk about that more.
Yeah, that'd be a great way to wind up. Kind of, because a lot of people, they're too damn afraid. And how many people? Well, so because of the fact you're the female anomaly there. How do you've been single for quite a while?
Oh yeah, long time.
And so and it's been a choice. Why do you see both sides of the coin, like being single and working yourself versus a woman who would go from guy to guy to guy, and is one better than the other?
Well, I mean, I do, and that's interesting because is it John Gray? I think is the guy who wrote All the Men Are from Mars, Women Are from Venus books. He did one that was like, I think it was like Mars and Venus during a breakup or during a divorce or whatever. I bought that when I was going through my divorce, and he actually said the opposite, that it's actually more common for women to take longer getting back into the dating market than it is for men. Men usually will, and not necessarily jump into a relationship right away, but will usually jump into having sex and going out and finding women for sex, because that distracts them, because men often find a lot of women to distract them, because men use sex often to distract them from their emotions and their feelings and stuff.
Correct.
And that women will tend to isolate and sort of fear men or judge men or things like that. And I think it can go both ways, but I think in reality, I think it depends on how people deal with trauma, triggers, things like that. If you're somebody, male or female, who just cannot handle dealing with their emotions and cannot deal with facing their emotions, or doesn't want to actually face what they're going through, oftentimes that's when you get people who either they just start dating a lot of people and sleeping around, or even, get involved with, drinking themselves silly. I mean, it's that numbing. Like if you want to numb those feelings and that emotions or distract yourself from them, people tend to dive into that, whether it be male or female. And that usually prolongs the grieving process, really, of the relationship, because you're not facing those feelings. You're just distracting yourself from them. Whereas if you're somebody who can move through those emotions and can work through those emotions and things like that, or wants to, or hit, I mean, for me, after my divorce, I was kind of like, I kind of had hit this point. It was this sort of breaking point for me where I was just sort of like, all right, my life has not gone the way that I wanted it to go. It's not going the way I wanted it to go. I have to figure out what the hell's going wrong. And because I was for sure one of those people who was convinced that if I could just get married, my life would be all set. Like life would be good. Everything would be taken care of. So I got married, and then I was like, shit, this isn't what I wanted,
Did that standard or mentality, do you think that forced you just to pick the wrong mate?
Well, I for sure, and I know this is going to sound really cruel, but I for sure settled, like for sure.
A lot of women do. I can't say how many women I talk to that are like, I knew when I was at the altar, they were at the altar exchanging vows, and they knew they shouldn't have been there. I was like,
completely.
That's terrifies me. I can't. So it's one of the reasons I'm petrified of the concept of marriage. You mean I could be standing across from somebody, I am so sold on the idea, and that person's like, yeah, I'm not him, wrong guy. Oh,
yeah, but the thing is, it doesn't have to be that way. Like it doesn't have to be that way. And I think if that's one of the reasons why I push communication in relationships so much, because I really do believe that. I really do. I think he settled too. I really think that he settled for. I believe, and again, he probably would have a totally different perspective, and he's entitled to his perspective. But I think he sort of felt like, okay, this was the time in his life where he's like, okay, I should want this stuff. I should want these things. He met me. He was like, okay, she fits the mold. I'm going to tell her that I want all these things that I think I should want. And, I'll settle down. I'll do, like, I think I represented for him everything that he thought that he should want in his life and should want to do. Like he should want to have a home, have a wife, support a family, start a family, that kind of thing. So I think because I was like, that's what I want, he was like, okay, I want that too. And then when we got married, and there was the timeline for things always kept pushing back. It's like, well, we can do this when this happens. We can do this. And it was like, it finally got to a point for me where I was like, I had a wake up call of like, oh, he's just going to keep pushing the goalposts back. He doesn't actually want the things that he told me that he wanted. So I had to ask myself, okay, if I'm not going to have those things, like if we're not going to start a family, if we're not going to, get a home together, if we're not going to do these things, is this the person that I can spend the rest of my life with? Like if we're not going to have that life that he sold me on and that I thought we agreed to, is this the man that I can spend the rest of my life with?
A lot of people are stuck in that, waiting for that person to rise up that level. And then the other problem is how many, go ahead.
I was lucky enough. A part of me wishes that I had figured that out before I got married.
Yeah.
But I I mean, I do believe it was something I had to go through. I mean, I wouldn't be the person I am today if I hadn't gone through it. It woke me up to a lot of like patterns in my life that I didn't see before. It woke me up to a lot of things that I knew. Like now I know more about like, okay, I know what to look for. I know what I want now. I know where my priorities lie, and I know what I need to, I know where my values are. It's funny because I mean, even now, I was just talking to somebody the other day talking about like values and relationships and what you look for in a partner. And I was like, if you had told me like 2-3 years ago that one of my top priorities would be finding somebody that I agreed with on vaccinations, I would have been like, really? That's something that I'm like, no, I'm not going to worry about that. I mean, right. I think back too, because my divorce finalized, it was actually like filed officially in February of 2020. So like just before the world shut down, which, you know, for me, it was kind of like when the whole pandemic happened and everything, I was just sort of like, oh, another thing that's falling apart. Like, okay, whatever. And it was actually kind of nice for me. I mean, I don't want to like dismiss all of the stuff that's been going on in the last 2 years, but like for me, it was kind of like going into isolation was kind of like, okay, good. I kind of need some isolation right now. Like this isn't so bad. But I think back to like, oh my God, if him and I had been quarantined together.
Oh God, I wonder how many people suffered during that.
We would have been on the news. Like you would have literally seen it on the news. Like Massachusetts woman goes crazy or something.
So
like,
glad I was single during that.
Oh, man. Yeah. I mean, I can't even imagine. Like I'm so grateful. I knew some people who were going through divorces and stuff during that time period. And I was like, I was so glad that like that it ended when it did and it finished when it did. I
can't imagine how many relationships suffered from that on arguments about like the vaccine. Like how many people had never faced that before that all of a sudden one partner says, yeah, we are going to get vaccinated and our kids are. And the other partner says, whoa, what are you talking about? I wonder how many relationships get destroyed by not having this communication in the front. You brought something up that I'm curious about, that he had attributes that you represented that he would maybe thought he would fall into. Do you think there's a danger of men wanting to attain or achieve because they know it will, and for lack of a better word, impress a woman, right? So let's just say a guy is a video gamer, lives in his mom's basement, but all of a sudden a woman comes along and now
my ex-husband.
Right, but then now he's got this drive to be CEO of a Fortune 500 company, and he wants to achieve, and he wants to better himself. I have run across a ton of women who are uncomfortable with them being the focus of a man's drive. He should want to attain that for himself, not for me. Do you have any views or experience on that? Because I did have admiration, right? When you fall in love for some strange reason, you want to do more. But women are like, no. You can't do that because of me. You got to do it for yourself. It makes women uncomfortable.
Well, I would say, I mean, there might be a certain type of woman who finds that uncomfortable. I think maybe if she's somebody who's not necessarily comfortable with intimacy, or if, you know, I mean, there's so many variables when it comes to the human condition. And so many women are not actually comfortable necessarily, you know, being in their feminine energy, relaxing into that, even being with a man who's driven, because I think that women have been programmed to be fearful of men who are driven. I think that's kind of a, you know, there's a lot of deep-seated stuff, I think, that comes from that in our society. I do know in my own specific situation, because I had pretty much, it's ironic, because I was like a running joke. Everybody knew with me that I was like, I want to marry a man with money. Like I had all these literally my comedy act was literally like, I used to joke with people. I used to joke with my ex-husband. I remember at one point when he was talking to me about like, you just want some guy with money. And I was like, have you not? I mean, first of all, anyone who's seen my comedy act knows like half of my act was talking about wanting to marry a man with money. So like how I used to get up and tell thousands of people every night what I was looking for in a man. If you couldn't figure that out, then that's on you, right?
And there's nothing wrong with somebody who says that stuff out loud. I prefer that.
But I wasn't dating guys with money, which I think came down to my own lack of worthiness and my own kind of like my own issues personally. But when I met my ex-husband, he was a mess. I mean, he was an absolute mess. He had this dead-end job he was at for like 9 years, He was grossly underpaid. He hated his job. I mean, literally, our whole beginning of our relationship was just him like texting me all day, telling me how much he hated his work. I mean, that was literally, I know people are probably like, why would you date a man like that? Well, you know, I had my own self-esteem issues.
We also stick with him and be supportive. There's
and so we, you know, he was, I mean, also, I mean, he had so many areas of his life that were a mess. He was sick all the time. He caught like every cold possible. He was so inactive. Like he was 2 years younger than me, and he was like a grumpy old man. It was really ridiculous. He was in massive debt. He had no money in savings. Like he was just a mess, right? We get together, and I would say like by the first year and a half we were together, by the end of that, he had a new job that doubled his salary. He had amazing health benefits now, like all kinds of benefits, bonuses, all kinds of stuff at this amazing new company. He was eating better because I was cooking all of our meals. He was like hardly ever sick. He was in better shape. He was working out because I was super into fitness at that point. So he started working out too because he felt bad because I was the only one working out. Like it was, yeah, I mean, it was amazing how I didn't see it. Like I saw that he was doing so much better, but I didn't really see that I had been the inspiration for that, even though like, I mean, he literally had been a mess for like a decade before me. And I go into his life and all I did was literally like, I was encouraging him. I was like, hey, you know what? Like, you're better than this. Like, if you hate this job, send out resumes. Like, I was literally just the one who was like,
what's wrong with that?
You like encouraging him.
Yeah, what's wrong with that?
So, well, it gets better. It gets worse, actually.
Did you start to lose attraction at all when you noticed that, like, you were the reason of his improvement? Were you
no,
okay.
No, well, see,
a lot of women do.
The thing. I didn't take any credit for it because he never gave me any credit for it. That was the problem. So we ended up getting married because he had this better job. He was in a better situation. And in my mind, it's like, okay, well, you know, he's got this great job now. He's got this great life. Now we can get married. Now we can have this family and the home and the everything. Like I was all caught up in this, but he never saw that any of this stuff was my contribution. And I didn't really even see this fully. I remember the moment that we had just settled our divorce. We were at the courthouse. We had just settled our divorce, which was messy. Like it was really messy because he did a lot of stuff, like a lot of shady stuff financially. He tried to hide. He was lying to me about how much money he was making. He was making a lot more than what he told me. He was hiding money away from me. We lived with my parents to save money for a house, supposedly. And he basically kept hiding how much money we had, kept saying, oh, we don't have enough money for a house. We don't have enough money for a house. Then in the divorce process, I found out that he'd actually been stashing away like piles of money in other places. Like it got really messy, which is why I get really pissy. Like when people on TikTok, when men are like, women are going to take half of everything. I got to be honest with you, by the end of that divorce, I wanted all of it. I was like, screw you, like, forget it. So I remember the moment that, because even during the whole divorce process and this whole thing about, he's like, I made all this money. It was what I made. It's my stuff. Everything I did was mine. And like, not to mention the fact that he lived for free at my parents' house and got free room and board while he could stash away all this money. But that was a whole other situation. And I remember the moment watching him drive away from the courthouse in his new car. And I remember thinking to myself, this man's life, in every area of his life, is so much better than it was when I met him. Like everything about this man, like he's driving away from this courthouse he still had some personality issues, obviously, but like, he's a pretty good catch on paper. He's a pretty good catch for someone else.
Oh yeah. You made him better for somebody.
Yeah. But there was this point that I was like, if he had just acknowledged that I was part of this, if he had just actually acknowledged that I was the reason but he treated me like I was going to be, he treated me like a liability. I mean, that's the whole thing that all the men talk about. Women are liabilities. Women are just liabilities. And he never used those words, but he pretty much told me constantly, because his whole thing was, he really wasn't financially supporting me at all. The only thing that he actually did was he covered my health insurance during our marriage. Other than that, nothing. Because I was always like, okay, well, when we get a house, like if he doesn't pay for this and he doesn't pay for this stuff, then we'll get a house sooner. And that's when it was like the timeline kept moving. And I was like, okay, we're never buying a house. Like he's obviously not, he didn't want the responsibility of a mortgage. He didn't want the responsibility of kids. Like that was all going to be, yeah, it was a whole thing, right?
Didn't want it because he didn't have a wife. He had a mom.
Yeah, pretty much.
He didn't want to give that up.
Yeah. So it was basically this whole idea where I remember he said to me at one point where he wanted me to give him a budget of like everything that I spent my money on. And I had actually recorded it at one point, and then he wanted me to give it to him. And I was like, no, because you're just going to sit here and tell me how I should be spending my money. And I'm spending the money that I'm making, which wasn't very much, to be honest with you. He was making most of it, but I'm living paycheck to paycheck here. I was actually building my blog at the time, and I was doing beauty blogging. So I was spending most of my money trying to buy products to review and build my brand and stuff like that. And he would get pissy if I ever got like a sponsored deal or something, and I would put the money back into my business. He would get really pissy with me that I wasn't using it on
sharing it. Yeah.
I wasn't sharing it. And I remember at one point I was just like, I don't know why you need a budget of like what I'm spending. And I remember he looked at me and he was like, because I need to know what you're going to cost me someday. Oh. And I was like, wow, like, wow. And that was kind of the beginning of the end, really. I mean, or the end of the end, but like, it was one of those things, but it was a really important lesson, I think, because I think it was like this wake up call of, I think we look for, and we tell ourselves that in relationships, we look for someone who will validate how we want to feel about ourselves.
Right.
Like if we don't feel worthy of love or whatever, like we want to find someone who will tell us that we're worthy, who will make us feel like we're worthy.
Somebody asked me once, they said, what do you think is more important when you're with somebody, is how you feel about them or how they make you feel about yourself? And I was like, wow, let's go for 50-50 on that one.
Yeah. But I think that's what we tell ourselves we're seeking. But what we actually end up finding are people who treat us the way that we actually feel about ourselves.
Yeah, for me, yes. Oh God, yes. I love serving.
Mm-hmm.
So I love being the butler, so to speak, in a relationship. It's a chance to act and do, but I'm always attracting people who take. And I'm constant reminding myself, well, let them work for it too. I never wind up doing it. But yeah, I attract what I project 100%.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't think it's necessarily that you have to make them work for it, but I think it's also, it's finding somebody who appreciates it, right?
Oh,
like,
God, yes.
I didn't care. I did not care. I would not have a problem at all with being the type of woman who cooked a meal for a man every night. Like that doesn't have a problem for me. The problem is if he never appreciates it.
Right.
Like if he
Say,
never
this
says,
is
thank
great.
you.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
100%.
Or having some level of appreciation. I mean, for me, it's just like at a certain point, I'm like, yeah, I will cook every single damn meal that a man eats, but he needs to buy me a house with a nice ass kitchen in order for that to happen. Because it's like, if I'm constantly giving and you never feel like you're getting it, even energetically, like you're getting anything back, you're just going to feel drained. You're just going to feel like you're depleted, and you're not going to feel like you're getting anything back.
I should put this as a clip on TikTok and watch all the feminists come out and try to attack you. How dare you say you'd sit there and cook for a man every day if he gave you... Oh, they would just hate that shit.
Yeah, but
what's wrong with that?
If a woman didn't want to do that, I wouldn't tell her like, damn it, you have to cook for a man or what. I mean, I'm not... In fact, did you actually see that video that was going around TikTok with the woman who... was talking about being a submissive woman? It was a podcast interview, and there was a woman who, I think she's like an actress or something, did an interview on a pretty big name podcast about being a submissive woman. I didn't see the full video, but I saw the clip on TikTok. A lot of people were stitching it. And I mean, I had a lot of thoughts about it. I'm probably going to end up doing a YouTube video talking about it, but I personally think that it portrayed being a submissive woman is not exactly what she really portrayed it as more like, I think this sort of needy, like, oh my God, I need this man to like me kind of thing. It didn't come across that same way, because she even said in the interview, she's like, well, it's draining. And my thing is like, if you are like, if you like, for me, I like cooking, and I like cooking for people, and I like cooking for, if I'm with someone, I like cooking for them. But that said, if I felt like it was an obligation,
then it's draining.
Then it's draining, right? If you feel like you have to do it, as opposed to if you're doing it out of a genuine passion for doing it, out of genuine love, like then it's not. And you also feel like you're getting that appreciation.
Dude,
back.
I hate mowing the lawn. I hate mowing the lawn on a hot summer day, but it's nice when you're dating somebody to hear her complain, I got to mow the lawn today. And you're like, I'm going to go outside and do it. And while you're doing it, she's appreciative and she makes you something to eat and drink. Then the mowing the lawn is great. Wow, well, we got a couple minutes left here. Holy cow, we made nothing into something damn good today. It's not that bad. That's fantastic. Good. I know it's good. I'm telling you. All right, let's talk. So let's come up with a solution to problems.
Let's solve the problem.
Yeah,
right
well,
now.
I guess a recognizable problem for today was falling into the trap of like what would you say? Not vocalizing, not knowing your wants and needs, and going through the painful process of learning it in a relationship. I mean, what do we do? So, are you suggesting that we do stay single until we know what we want, or how do we go through that? What's your end result thought?
I for sure think. Well, I mean, so it's a catch-22, right? So, I advise everybody to really go deep as to like what you really want in a relationship and like what your deeper needs in a relationship are, like not just the surface stuff or the stuff that society tells you or the stuff that your family tells you or whatever, but like really what you want in a relationship. I think it's really important because, I mean, again, another big lesson that I learned from my marriage was that just because a man has the means to provide for a woman or a family doesn't mean he has the desire to do it. And again, I think it goes into the idea that I think there are a lot of women who are like, and I was guilty of this, where if you had just found a man with a good job, like I just say man with money, but at the end of the day, like I really just wanted stability. And it was like, well, if I found a guy with a good job with stability that made good money, well then, okay, he would provide for me. But at the end of the day, I had to learn that lesson the hard way, where it's like, okay, but he really didn't want the responsibility of being a provider. He didn't want the responsibility of a home, a mortgage, a family. He didn't want those things. And that's okay that he didn't want those things. It wasn't really okay that he portrayed to me that he wanted those things and then turned out that he didn't. And that's why I think it's really important to be honest with yourself about not only what you want from a person, but what you're willing to bring to the relationship, and really actually be honest with yourself and actually go deep as to like what's important and what's important that I want to bring to a relationship and what's important to what I want from a relationship. I actually think I don't think enough people do this, where they actually sit down and actually paint out what they want their life to be like. Like what do you overall want your life to be like? And how does somebody, another person that you're going to be in a relationship with, how do they fit into that? Because I think we spend so much time thinking like, okay, well, what do men want? What do women want? And it's like, who the hell cares what the hell cares what all women want, or who the hell cares what all men want? At the end of the day, like, you don't need all of them to like you. You need the one that is going to fit the life that you're looking for. I mean, I could meet the perfect man, the man who was the man of my dreams, and he's like, well, I want to go off and live on an Alaskan fishing boat. And I'm going to be like, yeah, that's not happening. I'm not doing that. You know what I mean? I
used to wonder what the pandemic showed us of how many people where you have a man who's got a job, good job, and I'm just playing this sexist point of view for a second, and a woman got involved because he had a great stability job, but then all of a sudden his morals and ethics were challenged by his job, and he's making $250,000 a year, and all of a sudden he says, I refuse to comply with that. So she gets all pissed off because instead of supporting a man who stands up for his ideologies, his morals, and his ethics, she sees it as, well, you're not going to support me anymore. I have to wonder the drama that created and how much problem that truly, how many people expose themselves during it. Because when I went through my thing with my police department, I remember being terrified, not knowing what was going to happen. And I'm dating this woman at the time, and I'm like, what happens if I have to leave law enforcement and go work at Home Depot, and just spend 6 months being a cashier there? She goes, well, then I'll stand by your side. Oh, that sure shit didn't happen. So it's like, that's an interesting place to wind up being on there. Yeah. Everydaystarlet.com, everydaystarlet with 1T.com. Sarah Blodgett was joining us again today. Next time we'll come on, we'll do the dynamic breakdown of King Leonidas and his queen, because that's something we really got to talk about. That's the dynamic.
I have a breakdown of that on YouTube if anyone wants to watch it, but we can talk about it. Yeah.
All right, you guys have a great damn day. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you on the next podcast.